Femke Bijlsma is a partner and content director at design firm Cosman de Jong, which specializes in creating engaging and narrative spaces. She designs immersive experiences for museums and other clients all over the world. Please welcome Femke Bijlsma. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't we start with showing a little bit of what you do so that people have an idea right from the start. I think you have a clicker there yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're going to look at is the experience we created at the World Expo in Dubai that took place this year, and it was for the Dutch pavilion. And I think if we talk about the engaging immersive experience, I thought why not show what we mean with that. So let's have a look at this. And I think what you see is that content, as the word is here, and immersion is not, it's about storytelling. And this storytelling is not only rational, so we say minds on, you have to get people's minds on, but you also have to get their hands on. People have to do something physically to be drawn into the story and the content. And last is also what we find very important, and you all know, it's mind, it's hearts on. It has to touch you emotionally. So these three elements are always part of our immersive spatial storytelling. And I'm sure you can also do that with other medium. We combine medium, so I'm not against any technology. I'm only in favor of technology if it is, if it's useful to tell this story. And I think we're also looking at a medium, like if people think exhibition design, they think, oh yeah, stuff on the wall, lights on it, maybe some things in showcases, and a story with it. But that's not how we see exhibition design. For us, it's like telling a story in space, combining all the media in an integrated way. So not just combined, but truly integrated.
So how do you create something like this where you know it actually touches visitors? Because that's what you want. You want to really create a response and something that also evokes emotion.
Yeah.
How do you go about that?
Well, that's interesting. Like Nicky was talking about his theatrical background. We also have a lot of people working with a theatrical background. And I mean, the art of good storytelling is always that it has this emotional component in it, and oftentimes that is because it has it has a level of personal engagement. So it actually, it's not abstract, but it's concrete, and it matters for your life. For instance, that's an element that comes into play. Other elements are very like poetic things, just very sensorial things, or as you can hear, the music plays a role, of course, as well. The timing, the sequencing, all that, you know, any filmmaker knows how that works.
But it sounds quite, I'd say, as a challenge to then create something that has meaning for my individual life when you make something for a huge, diverse group of people.
Yeah, so that's the difficulty, because of course our target groups, or as you call it, it's basically, especially in a World Expo, it's everybody,
everyone.
Literally. So you can hardly depend on language to begin with. So it has to be very much, as Nicky was also talking about, you have to really plug into this humanity of us. What binds us all together? What do we have all in common?
Can you give an example?
Well, in this particular example of the Dutch Dubai story, it's about how to connect food, energy, and water. Now, these are elements that are very fundamental to each human life.
Yeah, so these are a bit more broad in terms of subjects then.
Yeah, and also the example we're looking at now, that was for the Museum of the Mind. It's about mental health and basically showing that our mind is a miracle, and each and every mind of us is unique and is somewhere on a spectrum. So it's not a binary system where you have a healthy mind and that's an unhealthy mind, but it's kind of a spectrum where we kind of we move on, and that's also universal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there an advantage, you say, to experiencing something like this physically as opposed to maybe a digital experience?
Well, the advantage is that we have all our senses on board when we experience something physically. So much more than I think is still possible in a virtual way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not artificial, it's real. And also we can meet real, right? I don't have glasses in between us. I can see you, so I get a lot of things happening here in between us and between us. It's true.
Yeah.
And we feel that, we just also don't have maybe words, so we don't see it, but we all know that's the situation. So I'm actually looking for not detaching people from this world. We've done that enough in the Western world. We're detaching our mind from our body from the world, our people from nature, etc. We need to bring that together. So we need to sensitize these senses much more than we've done so far. Not detachment. We've had enough of that.
It feels like that this is a bit of a common denominator between all of our guests today, that you feel you try to animate things in us that bring us back to, whether it's play, whether it's the senses, our bodies really, that we've sort of have this urge or this need to bring it back in. Do you recognize that in your work?
Well, as I said, it's not necessarily the body back in, but the body connected to the world around us.
Right.
There's not the detachment to the world, but the attachment.
To the world around you.
Yes, so also amongst people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Not that I'm against that.
No, you'll need it all.
That's very much part of it too.
Yeah.
Like, as I said, the connection with body and mind.
Yeah.
But in what we do is what people cannot do at home. So I come here, I can meet you guys in a way that I couldn't do at home. I mean, we try, and we've been doing it for 2 years, like on Zoom, because we had to. But God, we're happy that we can see each other physically again, because it's different. Yeah.
So I'm sure you need to do a lot of research and testing before something becomes finalized. So how do you test like the engagement or the emotion, or how do you...
Well, that's a tricky question. I mean, we can only test so much of this world that we're doing. Of course, there's a lot of... when you make interactions, for instance, you can test very practically, empirically, if it works. Or we work with like target groups in the Museum of the Mind. The example, I mean, they from the beginning, they said, we want to be a much more inclusive... We want to contribute to an inclusive society in the Netherlands. Okay. So from the start, everything that we developed, the content development from the start, was engaging all sorts of groups. And I think that's interesting. So we don't test at the end, but already when we think, what are we actually going to talk about? What's actually the story? Then already you get your...
So
your
right from the start, in
right
the development of the whole story.
Yeah, and you see that in this example, but also in the other example. I think if you go to another slide of Museum of...
you can do it.
Science Museum in... so this Museum of the Mind in Haarlem. I can do it myself.
Yeah,
so let's go.
You're in control.
This is the museum of in Bristol. It's called We the Curious. It's a science museum. And they said, okay, what are we going to tell our audience? Let's ask our audience. So they had like all sorts of ways to collect questions from their own community, mostly kids. And in the end, I think they gathered 8,000 questions, which of course then was filtered by, again, a smaller group of curators. But then at least you end up with questions that no scientist would have ever come up with, like, can your soul be seen by science? Or why do rainbows make people happy? And, you know, maybe you think, oh, that's a silly question. But I mean, if you think about it, you can then talk about what is a rainbow, how does light works on mental health, and all these things. Like science questions are behind a question like
Beautiful.
that. So.
That's similar to what you're doing at the Grote Museum in Amsterdam.
Yes.
I think so. This is sort of a new route for me when I look into museums that I've been to in the past and how I experience it now.
Yeah.
Is this what for you the exhibition of the future looks like?
It's very nice you asked that. I mean, the Grote Museum, I don't know if you... Is anyone of you already been there?
Oh, please go if you haven't. It's one of the best experiences ever. This person made it.
Well, my team.
And of course,
my
lots
team.
of other people. Yeah.
What you see happening there is that it's a dense combination of all sorts of media and also science and art, journalism, and also integrating the audience with questioning them. In that sense, I think in the future we see this we see it everywhere. Of course, this hybrid. We don't keep in our silos. We mix and match, and that it's this densification and of mixing of media, I think, is what we're looking at the Museum of the Future for sure. But also this openness. So it's not like a one-way messaging, but it's much more open and explorative. I think that's a nice direction. I hope that's going to be the Museum of the Future.
Well, you're going to be a part of that.
And
so
I
you
hope
can
to be contributing to that, yes.
Make it happen. Questions for Femke? Right, that was the most enthusiastic one I've seen all day. You don't have to run, it's fine.
Hello, Femke.
Hey,
we share clients. I'm from Fabriek, amongst others, but I'm also the chair of the supervisory board of Eurosonic. I have a question maybe to all the speakers.
But it's only Femke who's going to be able to answer your question. Sorry.
There's one form of immersive content which is brought to us by augmented reality avant la lettre, which is recorded music. And I think it's pretty successful, as if you look around on the streets and in the train, everybody's wearing earplugs. And last week I was on my bike through Amsterdam, listening to Miles Davis, and I can assure you he was not on my bagagedrager. So my question is, what can we learn from the success and the fact that recorded music has become so successful and is really immersive? So what can we learn from it? Because I think recorded music is ahead of all the other developments.
Thank you so much.
Well, indeed, that's an important part, a layer in our exhibitions, more and more even. So we even now work with, music designers for film to make soundscapes for our exhibitions. That are then also often they can be made interactive as well. What can we learn from it? I mean, we're already using it, and I think it's a very, very powerful tool. What's very difficult also, because you see it also used a lot in retail, that it's also can be very annoying
and quite personal.
And it's very personal. So therefore, you know, if you have, if it can be personalized, it's very.
But it's really interesting because that's very annoying. That probably other forms of immersive content can become annoying too.
So smells can be also very annoying.
Yeah, it's for everything.
I think the metaverse can also become very annoying.
Yeah, but I mean, your eyes you can close, you know, you can look another way, but smell and sound you can hardly close off. So that's much more intrusive. In that sense, you have to be much more subtle with it. Yeah.
Whereas it reminds me of what you do in Grote Museum, for instance, where the weather plays a big part and all of a sudden there's a hailstorm and there's thunder and it's raining all around you. So also in not very subtle ways, it can really influence, of course, your experience very much.
Yeah, but it's not for nothing that that's something like randomized and also it has a natural, it's mimicking the nature, so it's something that we also forgive nature because we can't, you know, we're like, oh, you can't say, oh, it's raining, you know.
Well, we try.
But it's like randomized is a great...
that's a really interesting
so people can
point.
Get much more accept that than something that like repeats on and on, especially, you know, for a visitor that's still okay, but you imagine you work in the place. Yeah. And you know, you have something repeating, you know. It's pretty...
randomized and natural.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Femke
very much.
Bijlsma.